Thank you. Again, apologize to make you wait. There was a technical issue with Zoom, apparently, that I personally had. So today we will talk about survivorship strategies and rules and operational values and how they are calculated. So the idea behind this webinar starts a series of webinars where we would like to do a real deep dive into business use cases, technical use cases of the entity resolution. There are a lot of them, there are pretty tricky ones. We oftentimes engineering and product management on the calls with the customers explaining, complex cases of data modeling. But to do that, the first webinars that we need to, so there will be a series of webinars, as I already said, and we will start today with basics. We have to start with basics, outline the bedrock of entity resolution, what is the operational values, Reltio rules, and strategies before we, really can start doing a real deep dive into this topic. So today's webinar, we'll just go through these basics. For those of you who are already familiar with that, it'll be a good refresh. But for those of you who are not maybe familiar with that, maybe not to the very details we prepared for you today, it will be a good start for this theme. Why is it not? Okay, so switching. Well, today's agenda, real quick, I'll talk about entity resolution, then operational values, and operational values and user interfaces, data structures, and operations like data cleans or profile matching. Then we'll talk specifically about OV calculator, and then things that drives OV calculations, survivorship rules and survivorship groups, their structures and types. And then we will go through specific types of survivorship strategies that lies in the background of any operational value calculation. And this way, entity resolution. Okay, how do I get this back? Trying to get rid of this thing, but probably it will disappear if I stop using my cursor. Yeah, so entity resolution. Entity resolution in MDM happens on the attribute level. And during the entity resolution process, an attribute either wins, which we call survive, or loses. Survived value, the attribute is called operational value. And it is calculated by the OV calculator, which is based, as I already said, on survivorship rules that are set for each attribute type. So quick example, let's say we have two crosswalks, crosswalk A and crosswalk B, and two values of the first name attribute and last name attribute associated with them. These two crosswalks, participate in the entity resolution. They both part of a single entity. And we will, at the end, we will have a resolved object, which will have both crosswalks. And the value of the first name attribute survived from the crosswalk B, while the value of the last name attribute survived from the crosswalk A. So we'll have a resolved object where operational value, which you will see in the profile view, for example, will be first name Mike, last name Frasco. And just a simple example. And then we talk about the operational values. Let me try to find a way to get rid of this thing. OV, or an operational value, is a Boolean property. Every attribute has it, is a mandatory part of the attribute. And simple nested, sub-nested reference, sub-reference, doesn't really matter. Any attribute will have it. An attribute can have multiple operational values, or 1 or 0. When we say that attribute doesn't have an operational value, that means that OV property, as you see in the sample structure here, it's a sample attribute structure, OV false. So this specific attribute, first name, it has one operational value, which is marked with OV true, and other values here are OV false. They are not operational values, but all three are the values of the attribute. Switch. Sorry, yeah, apparently slides are slow. So operational values in the user interfaces. Same example. In the profile view here, you can see in the left top corner, the first name attribute is shown this way. So basically, operational value is shown as it is. And we do not show non-operational values, as you know, in the profile view. We just show that there are some other values. This +2 means that there are 2 other values which are non-operational in this case. In the source view, which shows all the crosswalks, we do show all values, operational and non-operational. Here you can see that the value associated with this crosswalk is operational, and these 2 associated with this crosswalk are non-operationals, but you can see all 3 of them in the source view. In the data structure, you will see, again, I already showed how the attribute is structured, but let's look closer at the attribute itself. It has type, it has OV, it has value, and it has a URI. This unique URI is associated with this specific value, and it links this value to the crosswalk. So we say that this attribute's survived value came from this crosswalk, be associated by URI, right? And this is just an example of addresses presented in a specific profile, and each has operational value, and we call it golden record. So operational values are defined by OV calculator based on survivorship rules, which are based in turn on survivorship strategies. Survivorship rules and survivorship strategies are 2 different concepts, which at the same time they are interrelated and based on each other. Well, survivorship rules are based on survivorship strategies. Strategies are part of the predefined logic. So basically, they are embedded into the platform. You can use them, but you just get whatever you have, the list of strategies from the platform. You put it in your data model still, and later I'll show how. Rules describe which strategy from which specified specific list will be applied to a specific attribute of a specific entity type. And whether extended settings also applied, but we will not be talking about extended settings today.
Hey, Dmitry.
Yep.
I almost want to call you Chris. Quick question for you. Is there Reltio APIs that allow us to extract all or select attributes from each crosswalk within like a given profile as we seen them in the UI? We have some use cases to analyze this outside of the UI.
Well, seen in UI in the profile view or in the source view. So basically, the question is, let me go back to this one. This is shown exactly based on this structure. So when you extract this structure, this UI is built on based on this structure. Now you can extract everything like shown here, operational, non-operational. I think you can. Well, you can at least parse operational values because you have them here. So I'd like this question to be clarified. It's not clear to me what exactly.
Yeah, Sandra, I don't know if you want to take yourself off mute or if you just want to push that in the chat and we can.
I can some details. There is option for getting entity, and the option is get OV values only or non-OV values only. And if you want to get some particular crosswalk related value, it's not possible.
So this is Sandra. I'm just so I can see that I can get the non-OV values, but I wouldn't be able to necessarily associate that with a given crosswalk if I'm exporting it from the tenant.
You can. You always can do this by this URI. So
right. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. So you see, this is exactly the URI that associates. This is how UI understand that. We mark them by color in UI. This is how UI actually associate that these values came from this crosswalk, exactly using this URI, which is uniquely identifies each value of the of the attribute. So if we would have, let's go back a little bit. Yeah, you see, we have 3 different values here, and each has its own unique URI. And these URIs will be maybe in 3 different crosswalks. So this is how you understand which value came from which crosswalk.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Because we just wanted to, sometimes what happens on our side is crosswalks, business processes update a given crosswalk with completely different party profile, and it starts to impact the integrity of the golden profile because of it. So we just want to do that analysis, right? So
yeah, you wanna find the
yeah, perfect. Thank you for that.
Got it. Important piece here to know about OV calculator. Operational value is not stored. We do not persist it. It is always calculated on the fly based on the match rule. So basically, anytime you apply any operation on the entity, surviving attribute values always been recalculated. So that gives us a lot of flexibility because anything changed in the profile, we just recalculate everything by default and survive. Different value may survive as a result of this calculation. Obviously, if you change the survivorship rule for a specific attribute, you need to take care about index and match information because they stored in separate secondary storages. So you need to reindex or rebuild matches if you change the rule. But change the rule is you change the data model, so it makes you have to do that in this case. Additional calculation rules. You can pin values, as you know. You can do it even in UI. So if you pin the value, they're not participating in the recalculations. They just always survive or always win. At the same time, you can ignore values, or you can end date crosswalks. So values that are ignored or that came from the end dated crosswalk, they also do not participate in the recalculations. They always lose. They never win. And OV operations, you can, using operational value, you can tune some operations like cleans or search or export to apply these operations or processes only to operational values of the attributes of the entities. So for address cleansing, for example, you can apply this configuration with OV only equals true parameter, and it will tell the cleanse operation to only work with the values of the address attributes that are operational or OV equals true. You can do the same with search, and obviously then you can do the same with export because export is just an extension of the search. You can do the same with matching. When you apply matching, when you try to match two profiles, you can say match OV only equals true. You can set this parameter, and setting this parameter, matching will only be calculated or applied to operational values of the attributes. We also introduced a new OV only to the bulk update function, but it will be available only starting 22.1 release that is coming in the middle of February, and it is configured in the L3. So you apply this property on the metadata or business model level. You say for specific attribute, this attribute, when bulk update is applied to it, on taking account on the operational values.
So quick question, Dmitry. So when ignoring an attribute, if it changed to the cross updates, the ignored attribute with the new value, does it keep it ignored forever, or will it remove ignore?
It keeps ignored until you remove it. So you need to kind of unpin, unpin the ignore check from this.
Okay, and then one more question. Yep. So we pin a certain attribute, or we pin certain attributes values of record. When an update later on comes in for the same attribute, then does it not overwrite the pinned value? Is that right?
I think it's right. Yakov, if you can comment on this, because I think there may be a use case where I can reset the pinned.
Yeah, there's a very complex behavior, and we have even many rules. I know at least 2 of them, which allows to very smartly behave with pin ignored or neutral status of the value. So the answer of Dmitry is correct. So in many cases, it's correct that pinned or ignored value stay forever and never unignored when you put some changes in crosswalk. But there is some specific cases or some specific API which allows to change this behavior.
And we will talk about this specific or advanced behavior in the future webinars. So default.
It's even not advanced behavior of strategies. It's something about pinning or ignoring And I don't think that we are going to.
Let's look
okay.
at including this into future webinars. What I'm trying to say is, yeah, again, we have a series of webinars for that, and it's a good question. So we'll answer this in more details. But default behavior, you need to specifically unpin the value. Otherwise, doesn't matter if you do a data load, it will remain pinned, and so basically always survive. This is the reason we put this pinned values in the first place as functionality on the platform. If you don't want, if you want to exclude specific value, you just want to pin it and say you always win. This value always wins. You just pin it, and it never participates in calculation. Just always stays a survivor or winner. So let's talk about survivorship rules and groups, because this is what drives the operational value calculation. And today we'll show specifically how it happens. But for now, what are survivorship rules? These are specified in a business configuration. So in your data model, where you have all your entity types, attribute types, and things like that, you specify sample groups there, survivorship rules there. And this is how you do that. So you define a group. Inside the group, you define what's called a mapping. This mapping is a rule. You can have multiple, many of them. Rule basically says, it's a basic definition of the rule, which attribute, which strategy should be applied to which attribute. So strategies are listed, I'll show in a different slide, they are listed in parallel in the same business model. And you can use the same strategy in multiple rules, but you cannot apply multiple rules to the same attribute, because it will be a conflict. So you should specifically say, for this attribute, apply this strategy, and this is what's called a rule. And this is how operational value calculator calculates the surviving value. And all this is set in the group, in the survivorship group, which is defined for a specific. You can define multiple groups. Did I miss anything here? I think no. Let's do a quick time checking. We're doing good. Structure of survivorship group. Then let's deep dive a little bit into the structure of survivorship group. As you saw, it has a URI which defines the group, uniquely. It's a unique identifier for the group. It has a default flag. We can have any number of survivorship groups, as I said, but only one must be marked as default. If you specify several groups as default, you will get a validation error when you'll try make an attempt to save this business configuration or metadata configuration. We also call it L3 configuration, just so you know it's all the same thing, or sometimes L2, L3, because there is an inheritance there. And then survivorship group would have a mapping section. This is the main section, as we already said. We also call it survivorship rule. This mapping section describes which strategy must be applied to which attribute. Again, use last update date survivorship strategy for the first name attribute, and basically this is a link to this strategy, which is just a static strategy that exists on the platform. Yeah, I don't think I need to go any deeper than that.
So I do have a question for you, Dimitri. So if we're going to go to the next. So can we have custom survivorship rules? Say we have an amount column. I need to sum all the values coming from the different sources, and only the summed value should be on my OV equals true. Want to comment on that?
The overall question is yes. Answer is yes. Jakub, do you want to comment on this more?
Yeah, currently such functionality is not available yet.
Okay, so for the rules, you mean, right? We can only do custom strategy, but not custom rule.
Yes, correct. Current strategy is possible, but not a current rule yet.
Got it. I got it. Sorry, my mistake. So you can do custom strategy, but not the custom rule. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jakub. Structure of survivorship strategy. Well, it's simple. It's just, you can see the list of strategies here. You would put it in your data model or metadata configuration. The same level where you place your sources, entity types, relation types, and such. Well, they basically cover the next functions. They define which strategies can be used. So if you're going to use specific strategy as part of your rule, you have to put it in your configuration. And also, to see it in the UI, I think I have it, yeah, like this. To have it in the drop-down list, you also need to put it in your business configuration or metadata configuration. So, just have this list of strategies, and whatever you have here, you have in UI, and you can use in your rules. It has a URI and label. So basically, label is a name which you will be referencing. You will be referencing strategy by name in your rule. URI is, again, because every object in the business model should be identified uniquely. So you have this unique identifier as a URI. Basic types of survivorship strategies. We will only cover basic types today. Last update date, source system, frequency, aggregation, oldest value, minimal value and maximum value, other attribute winner crosswalk, and winner entity crosswalk. You can, switch between the, you can select a strategy pair attribute right in the MDM UI. It's available. So you can try different strategies applied. It will change your model. So let's talk about each individual strategy specifically and see how it works in the entity resolution. First, last update date. Basically, it says make all values with the most recent update date to be winners for this attribute. We have a configuration where I have my attribute first name mapped to the survivorship strategy last update date, or LUD. I have a crosswalk A with update date first day of this year and crosswalk B with update date December 12th of last year. So the value from crosswalk A will survive because last update date is applied, and this is this is the last update date basically. It's very simple, used a lot. It's very popular strategy. So last update date. Next one is source system. I can define a list, a prioritized list of source systems. It can be more than 2 items. I can have around 12, 20, whatever items here, all of my sources. And I can say that, well, if the value came from this source, it will survive. If there is no value from this source, so next value that will survive that came from this source, and so forth. So basically, this is this has the highest priority, and this is the next one, and this is the next one. So if I have a first name attribute again with source system and sources or crosswalks listed in this order, and I have two crosswalks A and B, obviously A will win, value from crosswalk A will win here because it has higher priority. Frequency. Frequency says make values that came from the most number of different sources to be winners. Very simple. I have 3 crosswalks, and the most popular value of the attribute will survive. In this case, I have first name N, and then I have first name Anna and Anna again. That one will survive just because it's the most frequent from all the crosswalks that participate in the operational value calculation for this attribute. Aggregation says make all values to be winners. And I have again 3 crosswalks, and all 3 will win in this case. So basically my value will be a combination of all 3 values of that came from all 3 crosswalks. Oldest value. Oldest value is different from the last update date because it works not with the last update date timestamp, but instead it works with the create date timestamp. And create date doesn't change when you update the profile. It stays, the same since you created this specific crosswalk. So if you'd like to stick with the oldest value that was ever, that ever get into this entity, was ever created from, came from the oldest source, whatever, something like this, you use this value, this strategy, and well, that's very simple. And again, same example, just create date. Oldest is December the 12th, so that one crosswalk B value won or survived in this case.
Hey, Dimitri, sorry, regarding LUD, what if the 2 records have the exact same LUD? So this causes survivorship conflicts?
Yes, this is why we introduced this new behavior for the bulk update, exactly for this reason. When you do a bulk update and you have LUD, multiple attributes can survive. So in this case, since 22.1, operational value will get the priority. For other cases, Yakov, if you have any specific examples of how the platform will behave.
Yeah, sure. So if, for example, we have two different values which came from two different crosswalks, and each different crosswalk has same update date. In such case, both values are getting winners, and both crosswalks are also winners.
So it will be like aggregation, right?
No, if you have a third value, which
it will, yeah, I got it.
Is not so recent, it won't win.
Yeah, so it's not the same exactly as aggregation, but the two winners will be aggregated, and you will have two values, well, similar to how aggregation works, but just for these two last update date, which exact match in this case.
Great. So another kind of question. So does Reltio rely on fallback strategy if two records have the exact LUD?
Yeah, if you want to take this one, fallback strategies are out of scope of today's call, but let's answer this one.
Okay, yeah, sure. There's possible to define fallback section in each survivorship mapping, in each survivorship rule. So you can unlimited number of fallback sections, and in case if you have 0 or many values which are survived, you can create some additional rules inside fallback section, which allows you to differentiate between them and select exactly only one survived value.
Thank you.
Cool. Next strategy, well, actually, we combine the two here, minimum value and maximum value. Very simple again. The minimum on the maximum value of the two will be selected. It's a made-up example here, license ID, but we just need to have any number as an example. So if you for some weird logic, you wanna the lower number for license ID to survive, you just apply minimum value. Again, if you want the bigger number to survive, you just apply maximum value. It's as simple as that. At the same time, there are a lot of real examples with various types of IDs, where you need the earliest identifier, especially when they are generated sequentially to survive, or the latest or the earliest. And yeah.
So quick question, Dimitri. Sorry, a couple. What crosswalk dates are used to calculate? I'm just going to call it LUD, LUD survivorship.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is the question? Which crosswalk?
Yeah. What crosswalk dates are used to calculate LUD survivorship?
Last update date.
Okay. And is Reltio?
It's just update date. Sorry, it's just update date. Last update date is the value, is a field called update date. Yes.
Okay, and so some more stuff's coming in, but is Reltio load date included in the calculation?
No, it shouldn't be. But if I could add something, Dimitri, there are crosswalk level single attribute update dates. So if those are populated, I believe they are factored in before the crosswalk level update date.
Yes,
right.
You're right.
So if your single attribute update date has a more recent date than just the crosswalk level, crosswalk level update date overall, then that gets considered for that particular attribute. In that case, the maximum is taken of that versus the crosswalk level update date, to my knowledge.
Good. No, it's a good point, and we will need to update the specific slide with that example as well. Because you're right. Yeah, there is an additional parameter on the attribute level. It is optional, so it can be missed. But if it's there, And if it is later, so basically it gets priority over the crosswalk date in this case.
Actually, it's inside crosswalk, and this single attribute update date belong to crosswalk. Therefore,
crosswalk, yeah.
our current session is only overview session, and it's not possible to speak about everything inside survivorship. Therefore, exactly single attribute update date specifics will be discussed in next sessions.
Yeah, we will include it into the next sessions. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's one step, deeper than
it was planned.
Still
guys, I figured we'll probably go a little bit deeper because there'll have to be a lot of questions, and I'm loving the questions. So there's a few more. What happens if we have given minimum/maximum rules for string attributes? So example, like first name.
Yeah, do you want to take this one? Because I think I know what will happen, but
yeah, it would be sorted alphabetically, and the most attribute which is most closer to A, which be minimal, and the attribute with value which more closer to Z will be treated as maximum.
Great, thank you. And then, so for src underscore sys, can I put only one source of highest priority compared to all the others? So all other sources will have same priority, and fallback strategy will apply if the highest priority source is not present between the contributors.
The answer is yes. It's possible to provide only one source system inside priority block.
Yeah, and guys, as you kind of think about some of your the episodes that you're going to do, you might think about incorporating some of these maybe within your demo on how to do some of this stuff. Just to FYI, I think it'll be good.
Yep.
A couple other questions. As far as I understand, LUD considers most recent of crosswalk last update date, single attribute update date, and then source publish date. Is that still this? Is that still hold?
Source publish date.
I think that source publish date is not included here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, Sampata, if there's additional insights or questions there, let me know. So for whatever reason, the last update date is not being updated in our tenant, how would this affect the survivorship rule?
Well, basically, if there are other values for which last update date was updated, they may become later, and then basically survive. So operational value may change because of that for a specific attribute. And then if you have operations that include only, everything tied to operational value will change behavior-wise. So for example, if you do search by operational values only, you're now having different operational values, so things like that.
Okay. Now, last question, but maybe not for the last.
Dimitri, sorry to cut you.
No, go ahead.
Yes, Sampada here. I was asking about this source publish date. If I would tell you, I don't see this source publish date usually. I mean, is this kind of specifically added, or how do we get it in? Like whenever I do a get entity, I don't see it in crosswalk or somewhere else.
But source publish date is not participating in Sampada anyways. It's just not part of the LED calculation.
Okay, but I had read it somewhere in Wiki, so I asked this question.
Let's sync up. You got it. Let's sync up after this call. Maybe there is some internal documentation that is outdated or something. Let's check on that.
Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah.
I think I've seen the same notes, but I think just to answer your question, source publish date is optional at the crosswalk level, and I don't see it used too frequently, but it's supposed to represent the date at which an extract was taken from a source, right? Because it might not be equal then to the Reltio load date. It might also not be equal to the actual record create date in the source, nor the update date. So it's just meant to represent the time at which data was extracted from a source. So you might have never seen it because it might not actually be part of the data set. It's optional.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and last question. Is it possible to have multiple sources with the same priority?
I would answer. So yes, it's possible, but not with source URI order. When in L3 some source types are defined, it's possible to provide priority, source priority. There is optional field for source type definition. And in this source type definition, for every source, it's possible to provide a priority with some integer number. So sources with same priority would have same integer numbers. In such case, you don't have to provide sources URI order inside SRCC strategy, because sources URI order provided in SRCC would take precedence over L3 sources definition. If there is no source definition, sources URI order provided inside rule, it would be treated as priority from L3.
Definitely another case where demo will be, great, because I'm just not certain how you need to visualize what Yakov says to kind of understand. So if you ever did this, you would understand. But if you don't, it's quite complex use case. So we'll definitely, in the future webinars, we'll touch on this topic and demonstrate it. So Chris, are you okay if I'll cover 2 last slides?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
So other attribute winner crosswalk strategy. Make attributes from the source that wins and the other attribute to be winners for this attribute. So the way you define this one is, and let me see how can I show it here. Yeah, this way. So you have 2 roles here in the mapping, 2 different mappings, so 2 different roles. For the last name attribute, you have a simple last update date, LUD, right? And for the first name attribute, you have this other attribute winner crosswalk, which points, and there is an additional parameter to this strategy, which points to the last name attribute, which basically says whatever crosswalk this value survived from, this value should survive from the same crosswalk. So I have a crosswalk A and a crosswalk B, and last name here will survive from the last update date. So this one, this one will survive. And because of that, first name will survive from this same crosswalk A. So that will be an operational value here. This one is used in locations and reference attributes for addresses, as far as I saw them, at least in the past. Last one, I think. Yeah, winner entity crosswalk. Make all values of the attribute from the winner entity to be winners. So the difference here is I'm not operating on the crosswalk level, I'm operating on the entity level. There was a merge event for 2 entities, and entity 1, won in this merge event. So if I apply winner entity crosswalk to my first name attribute, it will the operational value for this attribute will always be taken from the winner entity. So entity 1 in this case. That's all for the basic strategies. A lot of good questions. That's great. So we just wanted to walk you through, as we started, again, I'll just real quick repeat. We started with what entity resolution is on the crosswalk and entity level, not going into the matching and merging, but just on the entity level, and how, it is based on the OV calculation, and how OV calculation is based on survivorship rules, and how survivorship rules are based on survivorship strategies. And then we discussed existing survivorship strategies and with examples of how the operational value will be calculated in each example. Entity resolution is can be much more complicated than that. But to understand this complexity, you first need to get to this basics. So we covered it today. Thank you all for your participation. Chris, I'll stop sharing and give it back to you.
We have lots of questions, so why don't we just start with the questions, or a few.
Yep.
Is it based on old URI only? Is that the case or no? URL, sorry.
Okay, so as I understand, you want to know technical details. What is under the hood of this strategy, correct? Yeah, I think the explanation of this, how it works, would be done in next sessions. Again, there's too complex, and it relies on some terms like initial source. There's a hidden property of each crosswalks. It says what was the initial URI of entity when it was created firstly in our system.
Okay. So what I'll do at the end of today is I'll send you all these questions so you guys can kind of push them in to your new demos. A couple more questions. How do you select a winner entity?
I think it's the same question, actually. It is the same.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same question.
Sorry. So for the other entity winners, what if the value of FN was pinned? Will it still overwrite?
Sorry. So FN is first name. So the example that Dimitri pulled up on his screen was if last name is winning, since other entity winner is selected, then first name has to win. Now my question is, what if the first name was pinned?
In this case, it will win before calculation even starts. So calculation will not even be applied. It will just win. Not because last name won for the same crosswalk, but because it's pinned.
Great.
Okay, got it.
And Haresh says, it sure would be nice to have a live practice session.
Yeah, agree.
I like it.
But we needed to go through these basics. I understand for a lot of people, many folks know all that, maybe,
I think we're on it, Haresh. And then when we ignore an attribute value, does it apply to the entire entity class, or can we do this for specific records?
We can do it for specific records.
Okay.
You actually do it on a so you can end data crosswalk, and everything that comes from this crosswalk will be ignored. But when you ignore a specific value, I think, or not even attribute. Yakov, keep me honest, please. Do we ignore value?
There's two different ways. One of them is end date crosswalk, and each value which assigned to this crosswalk, contributed by this crosswalk, would also be treated as end dated. And other way is apply some status like pin or ignore to value. It
on
the value basis, yes. It's per value, per attribute, per entity, not per class. You mean type, maybe. There is no such thing as class, but I think you mean type.
Yeah, so 3 levels: entity, crosswalk, and individual value. You can configure on all of these 3 levels. But the question was specifically about ignore value. So ignore attribute. So ignore attribute is applied to value. You can, even within the single attribute, you can ignore a couple of values and then leave others as they are. So they will continue participating in OV calculation.
I think that I love the back and forth. Yakov is keeping Dimitri very honest today. So that was good stuff. So Chetan says that, if you're from Reltio, can we have a session on cleansers as well? So I don't know, who would cover that, but please get with me directly if you're very smart in the cleanser piece of it, and we'll put a webinar together. And you don't have to be an employee. You could be, one of our customers or partners that are really, smart about it, and we'd love to get you on as well. So I think that's it for today. No other questions that I can see, and again, apologies for the technical difficulties, but we still got the content in, so very excited about that. Thank you everyone for attending. The last thing I'll say is, if you haven't been to community.reltio.com today, we do have some swag to give away by either posting questions, answering questions, and inviting some of your colleagues to be part of the Reltio community. Go check it out. So everyone, thank you so much for attending today. This will be recorded and posted maybe by the end of today, but for sure by next week, early next week. Dimitri, Yokov, this was great. Really appreciate it. So good session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Bye.
Have a nice
Always
day,
said-
guys.
Thank you. And I'll stay on for a minute or so, you know, if you want to put some feedback in there. Hopefully this is helpful. We'll get some good demo stuff out there here in the next few weeks. And I'll get all these questions over to the team. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.